Hello to everyone. We'll discuss a bit about tree-related microhabitats and their place in the forest. And so this presentation lies in the context, of largest challenge, which is to monitor biodiversity. Because we know we're losing biodiversity all around the world because of anthropogenic disturbances or because of human activities. But the issue is that even if we know we're losing biodiversity, we don't know that much our biodiversity in fact, because often biodiversity appears in for certain species in certain regions, meaning that we have many data for vertebrate species, for particular species close to the cities or highest area of high population density. But when we speak about microbiome, fungi, insects, and in remote areas, we don't know. We have not many information about the biodiversity, and also it's very hard to make cross-taxa congruence when we do biodiversity survey. Meaning that if you monitor birds, you won't have many information about lichens, for example. And at the same time, doing exhaustive biodiversity surveys is very complicated because if you want to try to monitor all the species, it will be very costly, very challenging, you need a lot of expertise. So often you have to do some choice, and generally for rather popular species. And this is why, since decades, we're searching for relevant biodiversity indicators or something which is rather easy to implement, but which can also give indices about the presence of a wide diversity of taxa. And this is here that maybe tree-related microhabitats can be a solution. And what are tree-related microhabitats? But in fact, all these small-scale habitats we can observe at trees. So the cavities, they are the most well-known, but it also encompasses the crowned wood, broken branches, fungi, bark crosses, conquerors, also nests. Everything is small-scale microhabitats which can be useful for vast diversity of forest species. And recently, there's also a big work from Laurent Larieux and his colleagues to try to standardize our definition, the typologies of tree-related microhabitats, because before that, it was rather a mess because everyone was using his own typology with his own thresholds, and now we're trying to do something more homogeneous to facilitate the comparison between regions. Also, this paper proposed a first review of the links with biodiversity between tree-related microhabitats and forest species, but in fact, few links actually known, and especially it's very hard to see for the moment the links with tree-related microhabitats and biodiversity at a stand scale. But overall, what shows this paper is that no, because before that, we were mostly focused on studying tree-related microhabitats independently, for example, cavities. But now what is important is to have a broader vision of tree-related microhabitats, our network, completely network at the scale of forest. And currently an issue with tree-related microhabitats is that the study are mostly focused on typical forests, and this is a rather recent topic. In a recent review we published this year, for example, we show that research on tree-related microhabitats, most of the papers were published on the last 10 years. And most of the papers, they come from Western Europe, from France, Germany, and Italy to a lower extent. In fact, there are very few research on tree-related microhabitats in the forest. So we don't know that much about this thing in the northern forest. But the good news is that tree-related microhabitats, they exist in rural forests. So it can be interesting to also study it in these areas. Because here are some examples of some tree-related microhabitats you can see on the different forest species in Quebec. And in the last year, I started to do some research on this subject in Quebec, where, for example, we try to identify factors favoring tree-related microhabitats in rural forest. And this research, in fact, they follow a gradient for the hardwood forest to the softwood forest, so a gradient for species. And what we observed is that the abundance and diversity of tree-related microhabitats depend of factors of tree scale, for example, the species, the size of a tree, species also. Also the neighbors, because we observe some spatial patterns of tree-related microhabitats, for example, broken branches. And also it depends a lot of the stand, for example, the stand edge, because we observe more microhabitats in old-growth forests, but also the disturbance history, either natural or anthropogenic, meaning that even within old-growth forests, we can have very different composition in tree-related microhabitats, depending on the different history of the old-growth forests. But overall, what it shows is that we have a congruence of this result with what we observed about forests, meaning that this is the study of tree-related microhabitats in boreal forest is relevant because it seems that we follow some patterns in boreal forest, maybe at a lower scale due to a lower size of the trees in comparison to temperate forest. However, tree-related microhabitats are already under different level of threats. And the main threat, in fact, is even forestry because we're using over forest. Because indeed, in general, we observe a peak in tree-related microhabitat richness and diversity in agroforest, and because of even-edge forest management, we are rapidly losing agroforest, so consequently, we are losing tree-related microhabitats. In addition, we identify what can have a cultural threat about tree-related microhabitats because many of them, in fact, are perceived as defects by foresters, because as defects which can threaten the survival of the trees, of the quality of the timber, meaning that often the foresters will try to remove trees with tree-related microhabitats because for them it's an economical loss, which means that it can lead to a loss in biodiversity. And this is, for example, something which was observed in the temperate forest. Forest management since a long time, they are very clean of microhabitats because this way we have just perfect timbers. And so in the boreal forest, we saw very bad impacts of elevated edge silviculture. For example, if we try, as we do right now, to improve some quality, yeah, we lose some tree-related microhabitats, and specifically those degrading timber value. Those which have no impact of timber value, we stay, but still we can lose some specific types of tree-related microhabitats. However, we have some history of degraded forest in Quebec due for damage limit cut, and in this case, we don't see already any impacts of current forest management on tree-related microhabitats. But overall, what it shows that it's very urgent to monitor tree-related microhabitats because they're here, they're in boreal forests, they can be very important for biodiversity, but we are already losing them and possibly since decades. But then we also try to identify the links between tree-related microhabitats and biodiversity. And this is here that my research are most recent because, for example, the last year we start with Ines Diamond and with the UCAC master project, where we try to see if we can see a connection between tree-related microhabitats, boreal birds in mixed old-growth forests in Quebec. And in addition, for this year, we submitted some demands for grant for 2 projects, one trying to identify the links between tree-related microhabitats and the insect, fungi, and bacteria with environmental DNA. And we start a project where we try to identify remote habitat trees or with many tree-related microhabitats in harvested area in boreal regions. And also for perspective, the thing is that for now, this research has been made in Quebec, but the thing is that boreal forests are anything but uniform. For example, we have a very strong second-boreal heterogeneity in climate, physical regime, management history, species composition. With here an example in agroforest of just the differences in mean diameter of trees, and we can see that in some forests, you can have very large trees and in other very small trees. And as tree size is a very important factor driving the presence of tree-related microhabitats, it can strongly change the composition of abundance of tree-related microhabitats depending on the region. But even within the same area, with very strong local heterogeneity of species, of different history, of habitat conditions, and this is something where you observe even within a same old-growth landscape in Canada, depending on the secondary history, in old-growth forests, the composition of tree-related microhabitats is very, very variable. So this needs for more global vision, both at the local scale, but at the secondary scale of the place and the importance of tree-related microhabitats in boreal forests. So as a conclusion, I would say that the next research step, the first research step, they are very similar to what I presented just before because we're just at the beginning. So we still need to understand the relationship with biodiversity, the driver affecting the occurrence of tree microhabitats in natural forests, which are reference forests for sustainable forest management. And it's going to better understand what are the impact of forest management of tree-related microhabitats. But maybe in boreal forests, another issue, which is the forest surveys, because boreal landscapes are often very vast and it's very hard to do some field survey to propose a very fine monitoring. So we need to find some ways to monitor tree-related microhabitats on a larger scale. And this is maybe here that LiDAR can be very efficient to identify the forests which have the highest potential of representing a wide variety of tree-related microhabitats. In addition, we're still trying to, maybe we need to try to understand if there are some specificities of tree-related microhabitats in boreal landscape in comparison to temperate ones, because the current knowledge on the subject, as I said before, is mostly from temperate forests. So we need to be sure if they can be compared or if there are some specificities in boreal landscape. So overall, maybe what we need to do in the next years is to try to expand the research on tree-related microhabitats in boreal landscape. So it's something that we are starting also in Europe and in Canada. So maybe at the end, we'll try to develop a second research network on this subject. And if you're interested to participate in this project, don't hesitate to contact me. So I hope it was clear, and if you have any questions, you are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxence. A question in the room from Igor.
Yes, and thank you for the presentation. Very interesting one. I have a question though. So habitat is something where somebody lives, right? This place which is inhabited, and clearly, depending on nature of the organism, we can talk about different requirements which a certain spot, a certain surface, or a certain volume should possess to actually house this species. So how can we define habitat, avoiding this anthropomorphic view when we just see, oh, this is a nice forest cut, must be habitat, right? This is a beautiful prostic, I don't know how this in English, but like some kind of big fungi or some like virus infection should be another habitat. So how we can actually define it to properly cover the diversity of the places which can be inhabited, not just by looking at things which are simply easy to capture with our inventories. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Igor, for this question. Because in fact, it's a big debate right now about tree-related microhabitats, which is the question of thresholds. What is an habitat? When do we start to consider it? And to say, is it an habitat or not? Because often it's sure that we prefer larger microhabitats because often we focus on penetrate species, for example. So something which is easy to follow, easy to see, but it's sure that even small scale variation in the bark, for example, just a small cracks can be habitats for some microbes, for example. And so right now, what, for example, the keep of Laurent Larios trying to do to provide a kind of vision of the scale we need to consider to define a tree-related microhabitat as an habitat. And it's also something we try to do, for example, with environmental DNA. But in the same time, the question is about how we can make this indicator operational, meaning that if we want to implement it in forest survey, we need to use it, we need to define threshold, we need to define threshold to choose what is a microhabitat is what is not. So often it will be arbitrary, but it's often the balance, I think, between having something which is relevant for an ecological point of view, but which can be used by forester, by ecologists, whoever easily. And so there's no definite answer to this question. In fact, it's something we're thinking about. Maybe in the next year, we'll try to see if, depending on the scale of a tree microhabitats, if we see some specific species in the small scale microhabitats, for example, maybe it means that we need to rethink our way. But what now we have not enough information on this subject to propose a different answer. And so I hope to be able to work on the subject in the next years too, because yeah, it's a big debate right now.
Thanks, Maxence.
Thank you.